We'll be sharing a lot of numbers today, and as you'll recall, past performance is no guarantee of future performance. This presentation reflects the views of Empire Life as of the day presented, and it's presented for general information purposes only. It is not to be construed as providing legal, tax, financial, or professional advice. A key description of the features of individual variable insurance contracts that I may be referring to sometime during this presentation is contained in the information folder for the product being considered, and any amount that is allocated to a segregated fund is invested at the risk of the contract owner and may increase or decrease in value. We are experiencing the impact of a tremendous number of people approaching retirement or who are already in early retirement. They are looking towards retirement that is largely undefined and unplanned. They are looking back on their nest egg and worried that it will break under the turbulence of a volatile and unpredictable market. They are rightfully concerned. I'm Peter Wouters. Welcome you to another TRIIPSS webinar, When Order Leads to Disorder. One of the less commonly discussed risks of retirement is the risk of having too much market risk in your portfolio around the time when you are looking at or planning on needing an income from your investable assets. Many investors and advisors alike are learning that the mathematics behind accumulating wealth operate quite differently when they look at decumulating or spending that wealth to generate sustainable, reliable cash flow for what may be 30 to 40 years. This session takes a deep look at sequence of returns risk and retirement income. Advisors will learn about the order of numbers and how the order of numbers can lead to disorder in results when mapping out retirement income. They will walk away with a number of strategies that collectively can address these very real risks, showing the value of advice implemented successfully. Today's session will focus on the following 4 areas: investor concerns with retirement income, retirement and investment risks, sequence of returns, why it matters, when it matters, and the impact on how long cash flow lasts. And finally, income-generating alternatives to address sequence of returns risk. Some of the most frequently asked questions posed to me by investors looking at retirement include these. How long does my retirement income have to last? Will I outlive my savings? What happens if there's a market downturn around the time I plan on retiring? What happens if I need extra money for emergencies? What happens if markets improve after I set up my retirement programs? I'm looking for some certainty and peace of mind when it comes to my retirement income. Can I get it with the product choices that are available? Canadians are living longer these days, so it's even more important to be financially prepared. A 65-year-old woman has a 50% chance of living to age 86 and a 25% chance of reaching age 92. A 65-year-old male has a 50% chance of living to age 83 and a 1 in 4 chance of reaching age 89. For a couple, both age 65, there's a 50% chance that at least one spouse will reach age 90. Again, I remind you that the proper mortality tables you should be referring to are actually annuity tables. Why? Typical mortality tables measure longevity from birth. Retirement income planning and risk assessment needs to measure longevity for people who have already reached a certain age, like age 65 in this example. As I've reminded audience so many times over the years, life expectancy measures the point in time that half of the group at a certain age will die. The other half will live longer. So if you base your plans on life expectancy, you have a 50% chance of being wrong. That's a coin toss. Are you and your clients prepared to take that kind of risk with setting up a retirement income program? I think not. One of the less commonly discussed risks of retirement is the risk of having too much risk in your portfolio at a time when you need income. Here is an opportunity to create and build awareness for something called the retirement risk zone. The 5 to 10 years before and after the onset of retirement, or the time when cash flow begins, represent a very fragile and critical period in the investor's financial life cycle. It is called the retirement risk zone. When planning for retirement, retirees need to really review their portfolios and see how much exposure they have to market risk during this period when the retirement nest egg is most vulnerable to market downturns. The retirement risk zone should be important to investors and advisors alike because short-term portfolio losses due to market performance during this time can have a significant long-term negative effect on the longevity of the investment portfolio. Caution may contain nuts, an intensive and exhaustive workshop that we offer as part of our comprehensive retirement income planning playbook describes the sometimes toxic outcome to applying the same principles to decumulation as you did for accumulation, particularly in today's day and age. Rather than be helpful in an advisor's process or a client's understanding of assumptions, these principles may in fact hinder success or be toxic to your client's financial health in retirement. Rates of return over time provides another example of this. It is vital that investors are aware that a sequence of returns can have a dramatic effect on the longevity of investors' portfolio when the emphasis switches from accumulation to spending. Put another way, investors and advisors should be mindful that the order of the rates of return that an investment earns over time may not matter when saving for retirement. Yet we get surprised all of the time, as this chart indicates. The order of the rates of return matters a great deal when the investor is spending their accumulated money during retirement, and it's a much bigger surprise. Most investors these days are exposed to the markets, including those that are in the retirement risk zone. Most financial retirement planning is done using average return assumptions. Now we know that no investment-based product package returns an assumed rate of return consistently. The sequence of returns may not matter during an accumulation. In this chart, we compare an extended pattern of rates of return. The chart on the left looks like a terrible investment initially, and then has some pretty good years. We start off with losing 10%, and then losing another 13%, and then losing another 4% on a starting investment of $500,000. Then we start hitting positive ground and some pretty good years there, with only one really bad year there at age 55 at 38.5%. The chart pattern on the right is simply the reverse of the pattern on the left. It looks like a terrible investment uh, uh, on the left, but when you compare it to the right looks like a terrific investment. 19% in the first year, followed by 9%. Oh yeah, you didn't quite hit zero in age 49. You lost 0.7%, but then you had 11.4%, 29%, 13%. There's a lot of double-digit positive numbers in there. But the pattern on the right is simply the reverse of the pattern on the left. More surprising is the following. 1, the average rate of return and the accumulated amount at the end are identical, and the long-term average is only 4.8%, despite all of those much larger performance years. What you will learn is that average rates of return can be particularly misleading when using the same rates and patterns for both accumulation and during income generation. Negative returns early in the withdrawal cycle magnify the challenge in returning to asset levels that are capable of generating sustainable income. Volatility may not be a big issue during the accumulation years. In fact, it'd be quite beneficial when looking at dollar cost averaging techniques. But volatility can be very troublesome to a portfolio size and its ability to generate sustainable income for life during retirement years. Now add to that the retirement risk zone and those large negative rates of return years occurring then. The market value on the right dropped by over 30% or $600,000 just before the end of that comparison. That's an incredibly large amount of money. An investor in the accumulation phase, that period of time when their primary focus is on building their long-term investment nest egg, has a longer time period to recoup losses, to earn income, and invest additional monies. Someone in the retirement risk zone may not have the luxury of time to sit on an investment and wait for positive rates of return to make up for investment losses. Any new monies invested just before retirement may not be left to grow long enough and potentially reap the benefits of longer-term positive investment returns. Furthermore, an investor in the retirement risk zone may be withdrawing income and thus depleting assets faster. A negative sequence of returns has a greater and long-term effect during the retirement risk zone. What is one safeguarding measure? Low volatility of an investment that does have respectable rates of return in line with the particular investor's overall plans are quite an attractive alternative for helping to make retirement income plans work. This is in addition to having some cash on hand or very conservatively invested savings that can be used for cash flow and to support lifestyle when markets are underperforming. Advisors and investors alike are drawn to high, short-term, early positive performance. And it's always past performance over a month, a quarter, or a year. What comes up, though, invariably comes down. That is quite evident when looking at high versus low performers year to year. This lure can be particularly dangerous if followed during the spending phases of an investor's life. Let's consider these two scenarios. Scenario 1 looks to be a far better investment. Look at years 1 to 3, 5, year 7, year 9, and year 10. In year 1, when you compare that to the scenario on the left, you're making 2.5 times the interest rate, 20% instead of 8. Then you make 21% compared to 8. Then you make another 10% compared to 8. Yes, there are a few negative performance years, but aside from year 4, the underperformance on their own doesn't look too bad. Both yield the same result after 10 years, but the journey was quite different in each case. While volatility may not be a big issue during the accumulation years, in fact, it can be quite beneficial when looking at dollar cost averaging tactics. Volatility can be very troublesome to a portfolio size and its ability to generate sustainable income for life during retirement years. Consider the examples on the slide. In 7 out of the 10 years, the returns in scenario 1 were markedly better than in scenario 2. And that would make it hard for an advisor to recommend sticking with scenario 2. The investor at scenario 2 would generally feel she was holding on to an underperformer. But depending on when they switched from scenario 2 over to scenario 1, it could be fairly dramatic in terms of the negative result that actually occurs. But look at the impact of those 3 bad years in scenario 1. Minus 16%, minus 2, and minus 6. And again, though, in the first year, in scenario 1, you made 20% compared to 8. In year 4, you lost 16% instead of making 8. Again, that's a pretty dramatic spread. But consider especially what happens in each of the succeeding years after those negative returns. The positive returns were not enough to make up for the losses incurred in those years. And the situation may be exacerbated if cash is being withdrawn to provide an income during those low or negative return years. The investor is losing money and withdrawing money at the same time. And there is the minefield. Here again, low volatility of an investment that does have respectable rates of return in line with the particular investor's overall plans are an attractive alternative for helping to make retirement income plans work. Less dramatic ups and downs are easier on the investor's stomach. And we'll see some other examples of what I mean later. Averages, when applied to rates of return, can be misleading and deceptive when used both for accumulation and decumulation. Let's consider 3 rates of return scenarios. In all cases, the average annual return over 10 years is 7%. Let's go through some accumulation math. Let's assume someone invests $100,000, expecting to get an average annual rate of return of 7% over a 10-year period. If they earned exactly 7% each year, as in scenario A, at the end of 10 years, the investment would have grown to $196,715. Now, naturally, no one is able to get that precise pattern in today's market. Now, let's look at scenario B. Although the rates of return in the first 4 years all exceed 7%, there are some years when returns are negative. That is to say, the investment lost money. The 10-year average here is still 7%. The end value of the investment is once again $196,715. Now, what happens if the pattern of returns in scenario B is simply reversed? The investment loses money in the early years and has strong performance in the last 4 years. Here again, the average rate of return is still 7%, and the end value of the investment is once again $196,715. Now, this set of scenarios shows quite dramatically that the assumptions and averages we use in our conversations with customers during the accumulation phase can be quite forgiving. Different patterns averaged out yield the same result. There's nothing magical about this. It's simple math. We all learned in grade school that when you are multiplying a series of numbers, it doesn't matter what the order is of those numbers. The result is the same. Now, the pattern of returns can dramatically impact asset size, most keenly felt when withdrawing income or assets to meet expenses. So let's look at withdrawal math. Let's see what happens if the investor starts off with the same $100,000 and wants to withdraw a set percentage or amount of money from their investment each year. We have the same three investment patterns. This time, the investor expects to earn 7% on their money while taking out $7,000 each year to spend on their lifestyle. The experience, as I said before, is quite different during the decumulation or spending phase. Here, the patterns of return, though averaging the same, yield quite different results. And this shows how much the rate of return in the early years of withdrawal impact how long an asset can provide income. In scenario A, if the rate of return is exactly 7% each year, and the investor draws $7,000, what do you expect the value of the investment to be at the end of 10 years? Well, if you answered $100,000, you would be right. The investor appears to be spending only the growth on their investment each year. Here again, reality runs up against this ideal steady rate of return. In scenario B, the investor experiences a rate of return higher than 7% in the early years and a negative rate of return in the last couple of years, with some erratic returns in between. Each year, regardless of performance, the investor withdraws $7,000. At the end of the 10th year, the balance in the investment has actually grown from the initial value of $100,000 to $117,986. Now what happens if the order of investment returns is the reverse of scenario B? We simply flip it around completely. Instead of having some good performance years up front, where the actual return is greater than the target return of 7%, it is less. The investor still needs $7,000 each year, but the balance in the investment after 10 years has dropped to $83,150. Here lies a key influencer in the result. In the early years, the investment experienced losses in rates of return, earning negative rates of return. On top of that, the investor withdrew 7% of the initial investment, or $7,000 each year. That means in year one, for example, in scenario C, the investment lost 7% and the investor withdrew 7%. That reduced the value of the investment by 14%. A similar thing happened in year 2, year 4, and year 6. The fact that the performance was better than the target rate of 7% in the last 4 years did not make up for the losses in the early years of withdrawal, plus the monies that were withdrawn and not available to take advantage of the positive years of investment performance that followed. There was a 30% difference, or $34,836 difference between scenario B and scenario C. And that's just after 10 years. If future performance between the three scenarios repeats itself, then the investor will run out of money under scenario C. A key worry is running out of money when the investor is still alive and reliant on that cash flow for perhaps a number of years to come. The experience is quite different during the decumulation or spending phase. Here, the patterns of return, though averaging the same, yield quite different results. They all average 7%. And this shows you how much the rates of return in the early years of withdrawal impact how long an asset can provide income. Let's consider another example of your portfolio earning an average of 7% each year. The table summarizes the impact of various sequence of return patterns on the ruin age, the age at which the investor runs out of money. Here again, we begin with $100,000 from which the investor makes monthly withdrawals of $750, which is $9,000 annually, and is earning a nominal rate of 7%, or 0.58% per month. This asset will be exhausted within month 259. Put another way, if you started this withdrawal process at age 65, you will become ruined halfway through age 86. Now that should be obvious. You are withdrawing more money than the investment is earning. You need to withdraw capital beginning in year one to generate the target spending amount. Now, what happens if the actual returns are not 7% each year, but merely average 7% every 3 years? This chart assumes that the rates of return in each scenario repeat themselves every 3 years. We know that the investor will run out of money because they are withdrawing more than what they are earning on average. What we want to know is when that will happen. This table, produced by Professor Moshe Malevsky, summarizes the impact of the various sequence on what he terms the ruin age. On a positive note, recovery and average rates of return take comparatively little time to generate the target average that you see in this example. But the point is, it doesn't affect the results. It doesn't make a difference. You can see the difference in time it takes to spend all the money, measured in months between each sequence, and a 7% level rate of return each and every year of retirement. This sequencing gap can get quite large. Look at what happens if we simply reverse the sequencing in the last two scenarios. There is a 14-year gap between repeating the sequence minus 13%, then positive 7%, and positive 20%, and then comparing that to earning 27%, earning 7%, and then losing 13%. Both average 7% over 3 years. Again, contrast the focus on gross rate of return and gross investment income with spendable income, taking into account the tax treatment of those cash flows. It's not just that the comparatively simple math works. This is very much research supported. Fan, Murray, and Pittman, back in 2013, developed an adaptive model which considers a client's spending needs and uses equity exposure as a lever to manage shortfall risk. They find, for example, that beginning retirement with a lower allocation in equities can help to reduce the sequence of return risk. The equity allocation becomes higher later in retirement, when the client enjoys at least satisfactory market performance for a long period of time. Now, the source for this is a paper entitled Optimizing Retirement Income, an adaptive approach based on assets and liabilities. This tactic is called the rising equity glide path approach to investment mix. The important point to consider is that portfolios are set up to match the profile, not the other way around. The traditional rules force the plans and objectives to follow and fall within rules of thumb that are less flexible, that are not responsive to changing circumstances and priorities, and don't consider compartmentalizing cash flow needs with income and asset sources. An important consideration of the rising equity glide path model to asset allocation during retirement is that it may create concerns for elders as they get into the later years of their lives, because the equity component increases with time. And at the later years of people's lives, they may well be uncomfortable from handling the greater equity exposure implied by this approach from a risk tolerance perspective, even if mathematically and technically the results would actually be best. Here's a planning point. When it comes to advanced planning, projected investment performance, how often do advisors go through stress testing scenarios with their clients where the actual return is negative or at least much lower than the projected long-term average, and particularly in the first few years of retirement? What options can you consider when looking at retirement age and kickstarting that income stream? You could take a lower income. You could delay retirement. You could look at tax efficiency of the income and focus on spendable income instead of gross rate of return. You could look at any combination of those things. What options exist to generate adequate amounts of spendable income when there is a market downturn or portfolio shrinkage, and the client needs that income now, particularly during the retirement risk zone. Recall that the experience is quite different during the decumulation or spending phase. In the first comparison, the patterns of return, though averaging the same, yield quite different results. B versus C, the spread was $35,000. In the second example, there was a 14-year difference in how long the money would last, looking at the last two sequence of return patterns. A major point worth repeating is that these sets of returns, these sets of scenarios, show quite dramatically that the assumptions and averages that we use in our conversations with customers during the accumulation phase can be quite forgiving. Different patterns averaged out may yield the same result. The experience is quite different during the decumulation or spending phase. Here, the patterns of return, though averaging the same, yield quite different results. This shows how much the rates of return in the early years of withdrawal impact how long an asset can provide income. It shows the stacked effect of retirement risk zone, sequence of returns, and the longevity of an income stream. The challenge is how advisors and investors can avoid or minimize the problems or pitfalls within the retirement risk zone and address longevity concerns. Both parties need to pay attention to the pattern of returns that make up the average, that make up those average rates of return. The patterns can dramatically impact the size of an investor's assets when they are withdrawing money to provide themselves an income to meet expenses, especially in the early years of retirement. Investors eat into the retirement nest egg when one, they need to withdraw money and the markets are down, particularly experiencing negative returns, or two, when they take out and what they take out is more than what their investment is earning. If investors avoid exposure to the sequence of return risks by putting all monies into short-term fixed income products that don't fluctuate, the portfolio will show comparatively little growth over time. It will not likely keep up with inflation and the cost of living, and the cash flow may run out before death. If the retirement portfolio is comprised of equities, it's very likely that early negative returns will decimate the portfolio and force the retired investor to reduce planned spending or put off retirement. We cannot predict the sequence of returns in the future, so how can we deal with this dilemma? Success in retirement from a financial perspective, particularly when focused on sustainable, reliable, and predictable income or cash flow, is best achieved by having a documented retirement income plan supported by three legs. Here's a quote from Asset Allocation and the Transition to Income, the importance of product allocation in the retirement risk zone. In sum, although conventional wisdom dictates that asset allocation explains the greater part of an investment performance in the accumulation phase, we believe that product allocation will determine success in the retirement income phase. And that's a quote that came out of an article in 2006. That's 14 years ago. I add to that this additional consideration. Income diversification becomes a third leg in the stool supporting sustainable income throughout the period of financial independence, something that people still call retirement. The three legs of the sustainable income stool are asset diversification or allocation, product diversification or allocation, and income diversification or allocation, all connected by a comprehensive retirement income plan. That plan should be periodically stress tested to ensure that the solutions, the strategies, and the plan itself continue to do the job they were intended to do when they are first set up. If not, take every opportunity to adjust them to fit the client's evolving situation. Now note these points about comprehensive diversification in retirement. Adopt a coordinated de-risking strategy. Look at protection in the retirement risk zone, aimed at minimizing the impact of sequence of return risks. And that combination may provide downside protection. It may include guarantees. It certainly should involve a multi-strategy integrated approach that supports each other and the overall goal. There are a fair number of strategies that can be employed to deal with sequence of return risks. They are dealt with in other articles and comprehensively in the 8-step retirement income planning playbook. Let's focus on just a few that deal with generating retirement income. Here's the first of a number of income-generating alternatives. You may pensionize some of the non-registered assets by purchasing a prescribed annuity. Only the interest portion is taxable. Both the payment and the taxable amount remain the same for life. It's maintenance-free. It's a benefit for clients as they age, become incapacitated, and people acting under a power of attorney or protection mandate need to step in. Clients can add a minimum period guaranteed payout so that payments continue to someone for at least the time guaranteed in the product. This is very, very predictable, a value that people hold quite dearly. You may ladder your purchases as well, taking the guesswork over when you will get the best return and matching them up with fixed expenses. What do I mean by that? Instead of buying one larger plan, you can stagger them over time, say 5-year increments. This gives retirees the chance to buy blocks as they get older, where the monthly payout may be higher and the taxable portion drops. That's because the interest portion is smaller. There is a presumed shorter payout period due to shorter lifespans as investors age. You can also do this with registered assets, where, of course, all of the income is taxable as it is withdrawn. Amounts that are not invested give you access to capital if needed. Now, although these plans are typically not cashable, you may want to consider an insured annuity strategy, which can provide you with a lifetime income and provide a legacy for your heirs and favorite causes. I developed the decoupled insured annuity strategy that implements the estate replenishment part of the strategy first from the later implementation of the income part, boosting performance compared to fixed income or GIC alternatives, combining a lower insurance rates with higher annuity rates. I also developed a flexible exit strategy for those people concerned about being locked into this strategy. Now, you may be uncomfortable with annuities. You don't understand how important they are to aging clients, or you have a bias against them. Whatever your motivation, I encourage you to talk to our account executives about some of these strategies and where some of these solutions may fit in. Whatever the roadblock, remember that guaranteed lifetime income products should form part of an overall retirement income plan. Clients overwhelmingly want them, and this is one of the 2 guaranteed lifetime products that you can recommend. You don't even have to choose. In fact, combination programs may work best. It's more a matter of how much of each and how that ratio may evolve over time. For a refresher, watch the webinar on the 90% factors guaranteed lifetime income. As people age, and in particular as women age, they become more and more concerned about the threat of outliving their money, about long-term care expenses, and being a burden on their families, especially their children. Statistically, they outlive men and develop chronic conditions that impact their quality of life, their standard of life, and ongoing ability to do what they want to do, when they want to do them, and how long they want to do those things. It makes sense then that having a solid foundation and comprehensive income plan is important. Making the execution and maintenance of that plan easier for them as they age and for the people that may need to step in to manage things for them are highly viewed. Men may feel the same way about the assets that will likely be managed, controlled, and eventually passed on to their aging female partners. Recognize that financial decisions impact people. They often involve getting advice from others, and the conversations, the circumstances, and coordination may well change as people progress through the various phases of what we still call retirement. Having guaranteed lifetime income to replace or supplement other income sources is very highly valued by aging consumers. So what strategy do you employ for taking income when the markets are down? Place part of clients' projected retirement income need, usually 1 year's worth, into a conservative, easily accessible, and liquid money market fund, a high interest savings account, and perhaps a cashable GIC. And draw out your spendable cash flow from that account. Number 2, place years 2 and 3 projected cash flow needs into respective GICs or bond funds. The year 3 investment replenishes number 2. The year 2 investment replenishes the immediate cash flow draw account, providing stable, accessible monies that are replenishing the more immediate access accounts. And number 3, the balance of the investments are put into a diversified portfolio matching the risk tolerance and investment profile, where people can stay invested, to take advantage of growth opportunities. They can move profits into the 3-year stable accessible investments, which feeds, of course, the drawdown account. Now, this is an income delivery process where you allocate to the profile to meet plan objectives. Always expect certain positions to be flat or negative. Expect this as an advisor and remind your clients that they should expect it. Replenish the cash wedge with a pool of profits from those other investments. Take extra profits and direct them to lagging positions, and manage all of this through an investment policy statement. Reinforce this with clients during the understanding and engagement period and each time you meet to implement income generating strategies and tactics. And reinforce this by referencing the policy investment statement. Let's look at an example. In this example, we show a strategy where an additional $18,000 a year is required to supplement other income sources and provide the overall cash flow needs of the investor. Now with this, the investor is working under the following assumptions. One assumption is that funds A to E are earning an average 5% rate of return. Alternative products include our segregated funds, guaranteed investment funds, which together with our GICs can be combined to create this strategy. Benefits of using these alternatives are covered elsewhere in presentations and material. Please reach out to your account executive teams for more information and watch the Why Segregated Funds webinar. Now, when doing retirement income planning, there are 3 factors that may help to create a more predictable and stable cash flow. 1, when you're looking at equity funds, select a portfolio manager that displays competent downside protection. When you're looking at portfolios, select a portfolio manager that displays competent tactical asset allocation decisions. And number 3, when you have distributions, take them in cash to create a cash wedge to fund those future income needs and to shore up those lagging positions. That is, take excess profits from one investment pool and invest them into another pool that is underperforming, buying low. Unless this third option comes from a product that provides guaranteed lifetime income, distributions should be reinvested in down markets and moved over to the 3-step cash wedge strategy to provide stable, predictable, and reliable cash flow on a 3-year revolving cycle. When a guaranteed lifetime income product is used, there is less strain on the balance of the portfolio to produce needed cash flow in a given year, particularly during the retirement risk zone when experiencing sequence of returns risks. It combines investing with a safety net and contractually guarantees that income for life, putting even less pressure on that particular strategy. Now let's look at retirement income planning during the withdrawal phase by considering mutual funds, and in this particular example, a Series T mutual fund, looking at an equity performing fund over 10 years under 2 scenarios. And in this, I use the CIFSC Global Equity Mutual Fund category average annual returns from Paltrac. Here we will consider a Series T mutual fund looking at an equity fund performing for 10 years under 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, 2004 to 2013, the actual average annual returns for that period of time, the normal pattern. In scenario 2, we're going to change the sequencing. We're going to have first the performance in years 2007 to 2013, and then followed by the performance in 2004 to 2006. And that's to replicate poor timing, taking money out in years when the performance is poor. Now, here are some further assumptions. The capture ratios, when we're comparing fund management styles, is capturing 90% of the upside and 60% of the downside. And the T6 annual payment, which is a 6% withdrawal rate, is made at December 31st with a starting sum of $1 million. Now, while the years chosen for this example are older, keep in mind these 2 things. 1, they do cover the 2008 to 2009 market fall and subsequent adjustments, so may mimic the current market situation. And 2, this is math, so focus on the numbers and on the patterns. The global equity 10-year cash flow for the normal scenario is $507,000. If the investment management approach captures 90% of the upside and participates in 60% of the downside of investment performance cycles, then the 10-year cash flow increases to $538,000. If we look at the poor timing scenario, where markets start off with negative performance, then the 10-year cash flow under poor timing is $421,000. But if the investment management approach captures 90% of the upside and participates in 60% of the downside of investment performance cycles in a poor timing scenario, then the 10-year cash flow increases to $481,690. Now, let's look at this graphically. Compare the normal cash flow in blue with an investment management approach that captures 90% of the upside and participates in 60% of the downside in market performance cycles, shown in maroon. They are pretty even in the early years when performance is positive. But look at how the 90% upside, 60% downside outperforms in the second group of 5 years when recovering from the market downturn in the middle. It outperforms every single year. Now let's look at a poor timing cash flow cycle. Now, while the years chosen for this example are older, again, keep in mind these two things. They do cover the 2008-2009 market fall and subsequent adjustment, potentially mimicking the present real life market. And this is math, so focus on the numbers of the math. Here in the poor timing scenario, compare the annual cash flow that you will see, and you'll find out that with poor early sequence of returns, the 90% upside, 60% downside outperforms every year after the first, when of course they're even. Every year after the first, that approach, that management style approach of capturing 90% of the upside and 60% of the downside outperforms the normal scenario. So we've looked at cash flow. What about what's left at the end of that 10-year cycle? And we talked about that with an earlier set of scenarios. If we look at the market balance after year 10, the global equity market value is $804,746. And that's after taking out 6% a year. If investment management captures 90% of the upside and participates in only 60% of the downside in performance cycles, then the end value rises to $926,000. In other words, the systematic withdrawal of 6% of the value each year would have paid out $538,000, which is more money than the other two options, and still leaves a balance of 92.6% of the original $1 million investment. Now let's focus on an alternative income source that can assist in dealing with sequence of returns risk and the risk or worry of outliving one's income. This alternative allows people to stay invested in the market according to their risk tolerance and long-term objectives. Now, we know that retirees still need to invest for the future, which can last 30 to 40 years. Again, recognize that there are additional complementary strategies that may help address sequence of return risks. This alternative aims to provide the benefits of the previous example with a contractually guaranteed lifetime income safety net. Investors may consider a guaranteed withdrawal benefit policy. This investment can provide them with a guaranteed percentage of their investment for life. The older they are, the higher the percentage payout. Investors may withdraw fixed amounts. The deposit amount sets the floor. Deposits plus the greater market value and income bonus provides the base for the lifetime withdrawal amount, which is guaranteed for life. The lifetime withdrawal amount may be reset periodically if market values are higher than reset dates. They will not go down unless withdrawals are made that exceed contractually set payment streams. When used for non-registered investable assets, contract holders may start and stop payments. Optimizing flexibility, optimizing income and tax planning. Interest is fully taxed. There are reduced taxes on dividends and realized capital gains and losses. Payouts may be largely capital gains, and there is no tax on return of capital. Invested money allows contract holders to continue to participate in potential growth in the markets, which in turn may boost their payments. This plan is cashable. Again, both an annuity and a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan can provide guaranteed lifetime income, addressing concerns about outliving one's income and to cover off basic recurring expenses. In both cases, only part of the non-registered income is taxable. Guaranteed withdrawal benefit plans may provide for long-time wealth accumulation and capital preservation for investors. They are a combination of investment and income solutions built into one package. Essentially, an investor who retires is being guaranteed a base percentage of income for life, which at age 65, for example, is 4%, with the potential for increases if the underlying funds perform well and for each year they defer taking that income. The issuing company charges a fee, of course, for this guarantee. Who assumes the risk for guaranteed lifetime income when comparing defined benefit to defined contribution plans? Here is one of the many implications of the transition from defined benefit pension plans to defined contribution plans in the overall drop in numbers of people covered by any company pension plan. Current and future retirees may no longer be able to rely on a guaranteed retirement pension that provides lifetime income adjusted for inflation and that is independent of market performance, that is independent of interest rates and the general economic environment. Individuals are being handed the responsibility and the task of protecting and optimizing their retirement nest egg themselves. In a world where volatility and unpredictability are the new norm, this is a scary task. There are a lot of people in their 60s and early 70s who've been hurt financially and emotionally and are now fearful of the extreme volatility and uncertainty of the markets. It's a real challenge today trying to find high-yield fixed income investments for these customers. Bond yields and GICs aren't generating the rates of return necessary to build a retirement asset base and generate sufficient sustainable income unless you have an enormously large amount of money. In summary, this type of product, a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan, operates like a pension asset, offering benefits from both a defined benefit perspective and from a defined contribution perspective. What's more, it isn't restricted to registered assets. It can be effectively used for non-registered investable assets too. There are some additional advantages to using non-registered funds in a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan to generate income, namely the way income comes out, primarily capital first and then capital gain, and that improves the tax efficiency of income. When it comes to generating investment income, ideally clients want to know that they've got a floor. They want to know where that money is coming from, where are they going to be in the future, and how it's going to be calculated. Furthermore, they recognize the need to participate in the equity market as much as possible, knowing full well what the downside may be. If market performance spikes, these investors value the ability to lock in gains. These plans allow investors the opportunity to do both. They get a 4 or 5% rate of return on their notional account, depending on their contract, that is used to calculate a guaranteed lifetime income, plus get an exposure to the market if that's what they need and want. They have the flexibility to cash out if that's what they decide to do, when they want to do it, down the road. In summary, these plans are designed for individuals about to retire, in their early retirement years, or who are investing for retirement. Investors remove certain risks and receive downside protection, minimizing the risks by repositioning part of the money in products like guaranteed withdrawal benefit plans. A severe market downturn takes on added significance around retirement, during that retirement risk zone. Losing value in investments near retirement can be devastating and income could suffer throughout the retirement years. Guaranteed withdrawal benefit plans are one way of safeguarding investors against market declines and sequence of return risks. This type of plan is best suited for supplementing a long-term retirement income portfolio by providing guaranteed retirement income for life. Retirees can benefit from adding this product solution to their portfolios, as the guaranteed retirement income for life will help minimize the risk of outliving their retirement income. On the other hand, pre-retirees who are years from retirement can use this plan to grow their savings and protect their capital from the effects of inflation and downward markets. Think of this type of product like a pension asset. Pension income acts as a buffer and allows investors to consume more of the balance of their assets or invest it more aggressively to potentially yield higher returns and increase their assets, which may then extend or increase income or cash flow. Studies and experience have shown that investor behavior is frequently erratic. It's emotionally driven and inconsistent with illustrations of products performing under sets of assumptions or models. This combination leads to performance experience that is often lower than illustrations and models. When you couple this with a growing conservatism of an aging population nearing or in retirement who are stung by market performance, then you have an environment that welcomes products that offer guaranteed lifetime income with upside potential. These product types become even more attractive when the administration of those product packages sits with the issuing companies. They provided an administrative system designed and put in place for people who aren't prepared on their own or with a qualified advisor to assemble customized investment packages and subsequent withdrawal streams to monitor performance and assume all the risk themselves and do it for the rest of their lives. One thing we've all learned since 2008 is that investors' risk tolerance to market volatility is much lower than they estimated. Much of that is due to the fact that people experience negative volatility. Positive volatility describes scenarios where rates of fluctuation, when you're looking at rates of return, change, perhaps widely, but overall performance tends to remain positive. That is to say, investors experience positive rates of return. They're just all over the place. Market and product performance since 2007 experienced volatility where rates of return not only fluctuated widely, but where overall performance, measured by rates of return, was negative or could be negative. The fear of loss is a much stronger motivator than the chance of gain, particularly when the stakes get large, either because you're nearing retirement or because you have that much more money at risk. Let's look at setting and resetting the safety net. One of the concerns with retirement products is that once the income flow starts, they are not designed to keep up with the consumer price index, and especially the cost of living for retirees. The impact of inflation can be very different for a retiree compared to the general population. Another concern is that even with these plans, retirees still face longevity risk once the guarantees have been exhausted and all the promised money has been returned. Both of these concerns highlight the desire for real versus nominal income. Remember that the annual income-based bonus under a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan is not a guaranteed rate of return, it doesn't have a cash value, and is not available for withdrawal. Issuing companies like Empire Life have introduced plans that step up or reset the guaranteed base that is used to calculate the withdrawal benefits. These resets occur on contract anniversaries, typically every 3 years, but ranging from quarterly to every 5 years. Some plans even guarantee the stepped up income and that stepped up income flow for a couple for life, providing the additional benefit of longevity insurance covering 2 people. Each reset increases the income base and the resulting retirement income amount. If the market value of the underlying investments is higher than the current income base, the new amount is locked in and will not decrease except for withdrawals made by the investor. Excess withdrawals over and above the contract stated amounts. Locked-in investment growth may increase guaranteed retirement income, which is important to help offset inflation. This step-up or reset feature addresses worries about market downturns and outliving money, and it also helps to keep the guarantees relevant. Analysis of the reset feature by York University and others brings up some important considerations. Although the retiree can expect to receive a step-up or reset and the median amount withdrawn does increase over time, there is at least a 25% chance that the policyholder will experience no resets during the first 10 to 12 years of the policy. The probability of no reset is even higher if equities form a small percentage of the investments in the plan. A healthy allocation in equities within the underlying portfolio is critical for the reset feature to actually keep up with inflation rate experienced by retirees and to get that reset kicked in. However, the investors may be uncomfortable or ill-suited to holding a higher percentage of their holdings in equities, which do experience high volatility. So volatility is also a consideration. Here again, low or negative returns that occur in the retirement risk zone may boost the chance that resets will help. Another important byproduct is the concept of an optimal asset allocation within a vehicle that offers a guaranteed minimum withdrawal benefit. Preliminary research by York University back in 2006 seems to indicate that when investors are protected from prolonged negative returns during retirement in a guaranteed withdrawal benefit structure, they can comfortably and rationally accept more financial market risk for a given risk tolerance level. The study found that optimal investor behavior is to select the maximum allocation to equity that is allowed by the terms of the particular contract and their own risk tolerance. In a portfolio without guaranteed withdrawals, a significant allocation to fixed income bonds acts to protect future income withdrawals from downturns in the equity market. The guarantees in a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan provide that same protection. If the market declines, a rational and patient investor relies on the guarantee to support higher future income needs. The investment portfolio should be structured to maximize exposure to equities in order to provide an opportunity for growth and to optimize the use of those resets. Now, one question that arises is, how is the guaranteed retirement income for these plans calculated? Well, the maximum amount available for withdrawals in the calendar year is sometimes referred to as the lifetime withdrawal amount. The lifetime withdrawal amount is equal to a percentage of the income base, as noted earlier, which includes all deposits and locked-in growth less withdrawals. It may increase if the income base increases, but it will not decrease provided withdrawals don't exceed the allowable annual limit. An excess withdrawal alert is an optional feature available on some plans that warns advisors and investors that a partial withdrawal request would result in a downward adjustment to the income base, temporarily stopping the excess withdrawal. The issuing company requests authorization to turn the excess withdrawal alert feature off and to proceed with the withdrawal. So a nice safety measure. If an investor withdraws a legislated minimum from this type of plan set up as a registered retirement income fund, or a life income fund, or a life retirement income fund, or perhaps even a preferred retirement income fund, all those registered income fund options, and the amount is greater than the lifetime withdrawal amount under a guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan, there is no penalty up to the legislated minimum for that registered retirement income fund, life income fund, life retirement income fund, or preferred retirement income fund. The ones you conventionally refer to as RIFs, LIFs, LRIFs, or PRIFs. But you know I don't like using initialisms. This is another demonstration of the flexibility of these plans. A guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan is a viable product solution which can be used as a registered retirement savings plan or income plan, or as a non-registered investment vehicle for savings and generating income. An investor can benefit from potential market growth while being insulated every year from market declines. If there is a market downturn, the investor may still receive the annual income-based bonus provided no withdrawals are made during the calendar year. If a downturn occurs during retirement, he or she still receives a guaranteed retirement income. Now, normally, a sharp decline in the retirement risk zone would cause anxiety and potentially upset retirement plans. A guaranteed withdrawal benefit plan provides a level or increasing income even though the market value drops considerably. And that really helps in dealing with sequence of returns risks. Now, the estate or survivor's benefit guaranteed amount is paid directly to the beneficiary when a beneficiary is named. The guarantee is generally 75% or 100% of net deposits or higher amounts if part of the reset process kicks in. The reset process locks in increases in the market value of the investment on policy anniversary dates. It keeps the guarantee relevant. The contract normally bypasses the probate and estate settlement process if there is a named beneficiary. Long delays are avoided, as well as costly probate and estate fees. Also, beneficiaries receive proceeds in private. Furthermore, the contract can be set up so that the surviving spouse may continue to receive a guaranteed retirement income. In fact, anyone can be named as a successor annuitant in a non-registered contract. For a registered retirement savings plan or registered retirement income fund, the successor annuitant can only be the spouse. If the successor annuitant named on the contract is under a certain age, when he or she takes ownership of the contract, a reset of the income-based bonus, the bonus base, and the survivor's benefit guarantee may be performed. And the lifetime withdrawal amount will be set equal to zero and determined on December 31st of the calendar year that the successor annuitant turns a certain age when they want to take out income. And investments can be changed to other eligible segregated funds. But whether the plan is in the accumulation phase or income phase, it offers downside protection, particularly important in the retirement risk zone or when dealing with sequence of return risk. when income is needed and markets are underperforming, or when death occurs, perhaps exacerbated when that happens at the same time. This reference piece, which is introduced in the webinar, Why Segregated Funds, addresses and positions the death benefit guarantee of a segregated fund and its value in all types of markets, where volatility and unpredictability are the norm. It's available on the advisor website under Business Building, Step Up Newsletters. Alternatively, reach out to your account executive teams for a copy. Stay tuned for a series of articles based on this webinar, Sequence of Return Risks, and Retirement Income for ongoing reference. A guaranteed minimal withdrawal plan has many protective features that work jointly to help secure a customer's retirement nest egg from the risks of inflation, volatile markets, and outliving savings. The income-based bonus and automatic triennial resets may protect against a rising cost of living. The lifetime withdrawal amount are not mutually exclusive of other products, such as systematic withdrawal plans or combination solutions like insured annuities or annuities coupled with growth investments. Once you recognize that retirement is a series of phases with fixed and variable income needs, you can better package an overall solution that uses a number of products and strategies, each with specific purposes. In summary, the value proposition of this product is that it provides downside protection for any given investment portfolio within the retirement risk zone with a number of guarantees. It's well suited for those who don't want the responsibility of manufacturing the same package themselves and so leave it to an insurance company, particularly when contractual lifetime guarantees are so very valued. Investors remove certain risks and receive downside protection by repositioning part of their money in products like guaranteed withdrawal benefit plans. A severe market downturn takes on added significance around retirement. Losing value in investments near retirement financially, and income could suffer throughout the retirement years. Guaranteed withdrawal benefit plans are one way of safeguarding investors against market declines, sequence of return risks, and outliving your money. Please reach out and learn about Empire Life's most recent version, Class Plus 3.0. We're witnessing millions of people approaching retirement or who are already in early retirement. That impact is being felt in the markets by people de-risking or collectively redeeming billions of dollars in fund business. Advertisements about retirement seem to be everywhere, and too many pre-retirees and early retirees are looking towards retirement that is largely undefined and unplanned. They are looking back on their retirement nest egg and worried that it will break under the turbulence of a volatile and unpredictable market. And as I said at the outset, many are worried. Many feel unprepared, and they are rightfully concerned. So there's a great opportunity to be of valued service here from a planning perspective, from an advice and recommendation perspective, and from a packaging perspective. We've taken a pretty deep dive into one of the less discussed and greatly misunderstood risks around retirement income planning, namely sequence of return risks. Many investors and advisors alike are learning the hard way that the mathematics behind accumulating wealth operate quite differently when they look at decumulating or spending that wealth to generate sustainable, reliable cash flow for what may be 30 to 40 years. I trust that this session has shown you how the ordinary numbers, namely annual rates of return, can lead to disorder in results when mapping out retirement income. The strategies I've shared can address these very real risks, showing the value of advice implemented successfully. Speak with us about how you can learn more about the distinct discipline of retirement income planning.